Hi everyone, long time no see. So I don't know what to show you because I think by now you probably figured out what to do with peer reviewing. There was a video showing this. Then with the deep learning module, maybe I can talk, maybe I can say a few words about that. So let me share my screen. So this is we're still busy reviewing the projects. That's right, but also at the same time the deep learning week already started, and we actually have 2 weeks to finish the deep learning module. And the reason for that, it's also not an easy one. So like it's quite packed content-wise. Maybe it is even more content than in some of the other modules. And then deep learning is like it's also computationally more complex than the models we had so far. So for deep learning, we need a GPU. That's why we have a little bit more time for that. And don't worry if you feel you're getting a bit behind. We will not most likely, for sure, we will extend the deadline for this, like also by a couple of days, like we did with all the other modules. So don't worry, take your time. Maybe I'll just quickly go over the content. So yeah, like usually you just go through all these things one by one. There was one update from compared to the last year cohort, last year course. So we added a new video, the setting up the environment on Saturn Cloud. It's a lot easier than setting up the environment on SageMaker notebooks, and also definitely more easier than setting up everything locally. So for this, it will be a lot easier if you use an environment like that with a GPU, because training deep learning models on a computer with a CPU is not the most fun thing. It just takes too much time to experiment with everything on a CPU. So better use a GPU, and this video will show you how to set up the environment. Also, in one of the videos, I made a mistake. You will see this in the videos. So accidentally, when I was creating data generators, for data validation, I accidentally used the data generator for train. You will see this in the video. So, like for some reasons, because of this mistake, the performance on validation wasn't good in these little videos, like in data augmentation. But yeah, don't worry about that. You will see, like in the video, it will show that the mistake is here. So when you use the code from there, just know that there is a mistake. So I didn't redo the video this year. I think it's good this way. So just when you follow along, just note that there is an error. Okay. So I think that's all you need to know about this module. So homework is already there. So if you go to the cohort folder, you will see the deep learning module here. The homework is here. So the homework is already there. The homework is fun. So the data for this homework was actually generated. So you need to build a model for distinguishing dinosaurs from dragons. Yeah, and then you can either download it from Kaggle, or there is also a big gettable link here in this thing. So I'm sure you'll have fun. And now I will go and answer your questions. So I think this is the right one. So let me just answer your questions. Okay, I forgot to get some water. Just have a bit of tea. Anyways, let's start. So can data science jobs be done remotely for freshers? How and where to apply for them? And what do recruiters look for them? That's like 3 questions, right, in one. Can data science jobs be done remotely for freshers? Yes, of course it can be. The sky is the limit, but I think it will be quite challenging for somebody without experience to get a data science job remotely. And then again, it means remotely within the same country. Then it's possible. So for example, we had at 2 weeks at the company where I work, we had both interns and juniors who we hired to work remotely, even if they're in the same city or in the same country, because we are hiring remotely. So no problems with that. But let's say if you're based in one country and you want to work remotely for an American company or European company, then it might be tricky, right? So not every companies are ready to do that. So you have to somehow, there are companies who do that. So you probably need to find these remote first companies that hire everywhere. And then you will need to convince them that you are good enough, even though you don't have experience, so that you can work for them. That's tricky. And this is one of the reasons we actively encourage you. We encourage you to do this learning in public. So if you do this often, then you will be able to get a job as a fresher, even though you might not have like formal experience, but because you did all this projects, you shared your learning, and then maybe some people start following you, then the companies might notice you, right? And then it will be easier for them to hire you. And I think this is actually what happened last year. I don't promise it will happen this year too, but last year there was a company, Delphi, who hired 2 interns. And these 2 interns, so the company is Berlin-based. One of the interns was in Milan, in Italy, and the other intern was in Ukraine. So it wasn't the same country, yet they managed to hire them, right? So I think it's possible, right? And it was actually possible with this course. So I don't know if we will have this kind of setup this year. So I haven't heard from any company who wants to hire interns this year. So if you are working at such a company and if you need interns, then please get in touch with me. So people who graduate from this course will be really good interns, I am sure. But yeah, so you can help me maybe to hire people like this person who asked. Yeah, how and where to apply for them? Yeah, I don't know. LinkedIn. There is also how it's called, Angel.com. So this one, I think this is a good one too. Check that. But I think yeah, LinkedIn, Angel.com, maybe Glassdoor. Now the usual places where you look for job. What do recruiters look for them? Yeah, that's like a pretty generic question. So the answer will be also generic. Like they will look at the skills you have. They will look at the match, right? So how the skills you have match what is needed. I guess that's it. This is what recruiters usually look like in candidates. Then if you're interested, another thing you can check is you can go to our podcasts. And we have an interview, this one, Recruiting Data Professionals with Alicia. So Alicia is a recruiter. She was working as a recruiter at Zalando, which is a very large company in Germany. And she shared some tips. So from her point of view, like as a recruiter, what she is looking at when hiring people. So check it out. Well, quite insightful. So you will probably find useful things there. Well, let me close these things. Yeah, I think I answered that. That was a long answer. Hope it was useful. Any guide to document a project or repo professionally? Recommend a standard or reference example. I don't have a standard or reference example. So check the projects from the past year. I think that would be a good answer, and just pick the format you like and follow it. Another source of projects could be our project of the week. Project of the week. So here in project of the week, so here's if you don't know. So for example, this is something we will have this year, this week. So there is a plan, like broken down per each day, like what you need to do on each of the days, and then you need to follow this plan, and then at the end you will have a project, right? And then some people, there is actually a section here with projects. So if you take part there with this project, you can add links here. right? And then you can just go back to some of the, I don't know, these projects. And then I think, yeah, this is my project. Yeah, I don't think this is a good example, but maybe another source of inspiration. A far better one, far better source for inspiration would be projects from other students from the previous cohort. There were real gems. And this year too, like I saw really good projects. So go through them, find the ones you like, and maybe if you have time, you can create a template for that. You can say, okay, this is the reference example. I saw this in this project. I saw this in this project. So I combined it in a reference example. And then people will like it. People will appreciate it. And then you can also use it for your projects and then share it with the community. So yeah, that's a good idea. Any tips for understanding from scratch hypothesis testing and p-values? Yeah, there is a good book about that called Open Intro Statistics. You can check that one. There is also a book, Think Stats. That's also a good one. Yeah, this one. Yeah, check these two books. Especially this one, actually, Think Stats. I think it's free. Both of these books are actually free. Yeah, so you see it's available as a PDF. And then just go through this book. And this one is good because it shows, like there is code. There's a lot of code. So it just shows all these things like hypothesis testing, p-value, everything is like I think to some extent it's kind of similar to this Zoomcamp. So they focus first on a project and then they implement some of the things. So yeah, check that one. I want to experiment with AWS outside of free tier and have services turned on continuously. Tips or guides to reach low cost, no more than $15 per month. So what you can do in AWS is that there is part with budget, with billing. So you go to billing, and you can set budget alerts. So then you can say, okay, my budget is $20 per month, and if I reach 75% of that, then send me an alert. So you will get an alert, and you will know, okay, like I actually spent too much money on this. Now I'm going to go there to the console, AWS console, and figure out what is actually where I spent money. And then you can turn off some services you don't want to use. So for example, Kinesis. We don't use Kinesis here in this course, but we use it in the MLOps Zoomcamp course. So there we used Kinesis, and it is relatively expensive. Or another thing, so for example, we cover Kubernetes in this course, and then you might accidentally forget to turn it off. So Kubernetes is not covered by the free tier. So if you want to run Kubernetes, you will have to pay. And one thing that happened to me recently is I killed the Kubernetes cluster, but somehow the nodes from this cluster were still running. So they weren't killed, they weren't removed, they weren't terminated. So then, because I had this alert, I got an email saying, hey, like it seems you spent already, for me it was like $80, which is a lot higher than usual. Then I went to this budget explorer, cost explorer, and then I saw, okay, like I am spending money on EC2, so I went there, I noticed the instances running, and then I killed them. And then I would propose to have multiple alerts like that. So maybe have one for $20, another for $50, another for $70, another for $100. So you kind of, because when the first alert goes off, you go there and fix it. You want to make sure you stop spending the money, right? So the second alert, the second like threshold, will help you to make sure that you're not keeping spending the money. Okay, I guess that's it. Yeah, and then also, like I actually have some credits from AWS, and I wanted to give them away for the participation in that in these projects. I didn't do this for. Actually, we wanted to do it for this one for recommenders. So I didn't do this for the next one. So we will the next project of the week will be about Fast API, and we should totally give these AWS credits to participants. So maybe keep an eye on that and remind me that I promised you that in case I forget. So then you will get some credits. Not everyone, some of you will get, like if you just commit some project that is not really useful, you will not get credits. But we will probably like decide which projects will get credits, and then so I can give you like $50. So then, of course, it's not a lot, but you can experiment with different AWS stuff. Yep. How to handle categorical variables with several options in dictionary vectorizer, since it consumes a lot of memory when training it. Several options in. Yeah, so one thing I would suggest is go check office hours from the last year. So from 2021, if you go to this midterm project, there are these office hours. I think it's week 9, where I show how to use count vectorizer for doing one-hot encoding. Yes, this one, count vectorizer. And count vectorizer you can apply some filtering. So for example, you can say that I'm only interested in categories that appear at least in 100 observations. So then instead of looking at all possible values, you look at on frequent ones. So for example, here you see like these are the frequent ones. Yeah, so go through this document. I think that there are a lot of different ways you can add filtering here. So it could be the minimal frequency. It could be something else. So, but how to say, like it's actually a bit misusing count vectorizer, because count vectorizer is supposed to be used with text features, not with usual categorical features, but you kind of hack it in a way. Sort of you say, okay, my categories, you turn these categories into text, and then you train count vectorizer on them. So yeah, go through this thing. You can also find the video from that where I do it in live. And yeah, that's very useful. Then again, if you have a huge lot of different categories, different values, then count vectorizer will still be like it will still require some memory to train. There is an alternative. It's called hashing vectorizer. Yeah, this one. So this one does not require training. So you can say, okay, I want only to have only like, I don't know, 10,000 features, not more than that. And it will actually take a word and it will compute a hash of this word or value, like category, and it would randomly put in one of the columns of this hashing vectorizer. Not randomly, it will compute hash and then put in one of them. So it will be deterministic, of course. Sorry, I didn't choose the right words. So this is a good way to save memory if you have a lot of categories. So hashing vectorizer. Yeah, and then it works in the same way as count vectorizer, except you don't need to do fit. Actually, you see that you can actually just go through this and read it yourself. So it explains everything that you need to know when you compare this one versus count vectorizer. Is there a way to read all the answered questions from this Slido? I'm not sure what you mean. So do you want to take a look at all the questions, or you're interested in the answers too? I think there is a way to export the questions because it's the same Slido link for all the sessions. I'm also working on actually turning all my answers into text. So there will be an Airtable table from Airtable with all the answers. So maybe I'll share it later. It's not finished yet. But yeah, there will be all the answers I gave in a text form. Yeah, it's, you can imagine, of course, it's very time consuming, so it takes a bit of time, but I'll share this thing soon with you. Yeah, hope I answered that. What is a good target for accuracy in data modeling? There is no good target. So it's all case dependent. In some cases, if you have accuracy 90%, this is very suspicious. You probably, you should be worried and check your data for issues. Right. So sometimes, like, you can have even, I don't know, 50% accuracy in some cases is good. And then it also depends on how, like, what's the skewness of data, like how did I call it, like when you have a lot of examples of one class but very few of other class, like class imbalance. Yeah, so it also depends on that, right? Because as you remember, accuracy is such a misleading metric. In some cases, you should look at things like precision and recall, and you shouldn't consider looking at accuracy at all. I have a very big data set, almost 100 gigabytes in HDF format. Even loading it is becoming a headache. What is the best practice? Can you suggest? Yeah, that's also a very generic question. So it depends on what kind of data you have. Can you take a sample from this data, or you need to use the entire data set? And then also, as I said, what kind of data? Like, is it images? Is it text? Is it tables? I would just read a part of this. So maybe you can read only in the. I actually don't know, like, if it's possible with HDF format. Maybe you can just read, I don't know, the first 100, like the first couple of thousand rows. Yeah, I don't know. Then the best practices could be, let's say, first one is you take a sample from this. And second one, maybe you see how you can parallelize it with something like Spark. Then again, I don't know what exactly is HDF format, and if you can read it with Spark, maybe not. Maybe you will need to first turn it into something else and then read it with something like Spark. And then third, get a big machine with, I don't know, 500 megs of RAM, for example, and then just read it from there. The second, the last option seems the easiest one if you actually need to read all the data. In some cases, you might not. And is it related to neural networks? So I think some of the data was saved in this format. I think, I might be wrong, I think you might iterate over this data and then read it in chunks. You don't need to read the entire thing. You just read, I don't know, 1 gigabyte at a time, for example. Yeah, that's another strategy, chunking. And then this is actually something that Spark relies on. So Spark, when dealing with large data sets, it chunks the data set into small parts, into small partitions, and then it processes each partition separately, and then it combines the result at the end. Rule-based modeling versus data modeling. What points should be considered to pick one over the other? Yeah, it's again, like, really depends on your problem, but you probably want to start with rule-based modeling. So the very first approach you can take is develop a simple rule, and then you can actually learn this rule. So maybe you can train a decision tree on this data, and then you can see what kind of rules the tree learned, right? And then you can just use that as your first model, but then over time, like, it's growing. And then actually, I think I'm just describing data modeling here, right? So because I just realized that training a decision tree and then using it kind of becomes data modeling, right? But honestly, like, for some systems, it makes sense to have rule-based modeling, because sometimes you want to have flexibility of overriding some of the model decisions. So you can even have both, right? So you have a model, a machine learning model, and then you have rules, and then they kind of coexist. And this is actually what we have at OLX for moderation. So moderation is the process of deciding if a listing, so this is an online marketplace, and let's say you want to sell your phone, right? So you go to OLX and you want to sell it. So you fill in the title, you fill the description, you upload some pictures, and then you hit on publish. The listing is not published immediately. it goes through the moderation process. So we look at this listing and we conclude that it's safe to publish. And then there are a few checks. So the first check might be like, is it a duplicate of another listing? If it's yes, it's not published. If it's not a duplicate, then then we do another check. Or actually, these checks happen in parallel. Then another check could be like, is there any is there a gun or some other prohibited item, or is there not safe for work content there? Like there is a bunch of checks. Most of these checks are models, machine learning models, but also a lot of these checks are rule-based models. I will not tell you these rules, but like they could be if something, then not published, for example, or if something, then show it to moderators. And these rules allow, like they're very flexible, and moderators can just go to our moderation platform and add these rules manually. This is very helpful because retraining a model takes some time. You don't always have this time, right? Especially in cases like moderation systems. So you want to have the flexibility of adding rules and reacting to things that are happening almost immediately as they happen, right? And then rules allow for this flexibility. And these two things coexist. So in summary, you can start with rule-based model, then you do data modeling, and then these things actually, one does not exclude the other. So you can use these rules as features to your models, right? And then you can use both in your production systems. By the end of the project, is it possible to do a project simulating the real workplace? Teams deciding the approach, closely simulating work environment. I'm happy to support you if you want to organize that. I personally, like we in Datadog Club, like we have so many initiatives, it will be very difficult for us to actively organize this. But if you want to do this, I can give you all the support you need. So I can promote this, I can send it in the mailing list, I can announce this on LinkedIn. So I will be very happy to organize that. But you will need to think what kind of project it could be. We can actually think together, but at least like if you want, you can start putting some ideas of these ideas in a Google document, and then we can discuss this, and then we can run it. But yeah, somebody needs to start this initiative. I unfortunately cannot do this, but I will be very happy if we do this together. And yeah, I think we can think of some cases actually. So one of the examples, I think somebody shared this example here in this office hours, was to train a model that could select the best answer from this FAQ, right? So we have a lot of questions here, a lot of answers here, and many people go to Slack and ask a question. And many of these questions are already in this FAQ document. So a good close to real life project could be build a system that will actually select, like for a question in Slack, it will select the best one in FAQ. So yeah, could be a nice idea. If you're interested, let me know and we can see how to organize that. Or maybe you have some other ideas. How should I evaluate an RMSE to be considered low or high? So this is very problem specific, and you cannot, right? If you're evaluating a project and you see that they have this RMSE, there is nothing you can do with this information. There is even no criteria to evaluate this, right? So if you notice, there is no criterion that says, okay, the model quality is good or not, right? So we don't evaluate this because all of this is problem specific. If this is for your project, what you can do is you can train a baseline. The baseline could be just predicting the average value. So let's say you have all the cars, right? So you take the average price for these cars, and then you compute the root mean squared error of this prediction. You just simply predict the average for all the cars. So you will get some root mean squared error, and then you train a simple model. And then this simple model, hopefully, should be an improvement over the baseline. And then you can see what is the improvement. Like it could be, I don't know, 200, 300%. right? And then because you already know the baseline value, you can compare the improvement over the baseline. So this is how you can understand if it's low or high. So if it's worse than the baseline, it's of course low, right? But if it's better than the baseline, okay, it's better. And then you can see that, for example, XGBoost gives you even better performance than, I don't know, linear regression. And this is, you can have like a relative ranking of the models. Okay. I'd like to review more than 3 projects. Is it welcomed? And will it be rewarded with extra points? You're more than welcome to do this, and your peers will appreciate it. But we cap the number of points you will get for that at 3 projects. So you will not get more than, I think we have 3 points per each project. So you will get 9 points for evaluating the projects, but you will not get 12 points, right? So it's more than welcome. You will learn a lot by doing this, but you will not get extra points. So you shouldn't evaluate the projects just to get the points. You should evaluate them because you want to help your peers and you want to learn something new. So this is a very good motivation, and you will be rewarded with new knowledge. I think this is how I should have answered that. Not with points. Besides the 30 hours of GPU offered in Saturn Cloud, is Collab a possible solution to execute the deep learning tasks in this session with GPUs? Collab is an option, yes, you can use that. Collab is a little bit unpredictable when it comes to working. Sometimes it just stops working, and then you have to restart and start from the training the model from scratch. So yeah, overall it's good, like it works. It's just that, I don't know, they might turn off your instance after 1 hour. Maybe it's, it's not like there is a rule that after 1 hour your instance will die. It happens usually sporadically. So yeah, like if you want to have some guarantees with Collab, you probably have to pay, right? And if you just want to play with Collab for a free plan, then yeah, there is another downside. I think if you want to save something in Collab and then your session dies, I'm not sure if you can recover the files. You need to save them, I don't know, in your Google Drive somewhere, or I don't know how it works. So there is a bit of overhead when it comes to the free version in Collab. Yeah, so if you're happy to do this, do it by all means. I actually don't know how much the paid version costs. I think 30 hours will be enough, and remember that it's per month. So next month you will get more hours. Can I get the certificate if I didn't send the midterm project? You can. Remember, we have 3 projects, and you need to complete 2 of them to get a certificate. So it means that if you miss this one, if you didn't finish this one, you have to do Capstone 1 and Capstone 2 projects. So if you pass them, you will get a certificate. So that's, and also, let's say if you just joined the course now, you can still catch up. So now you can watch the videos, right? And then by the time we have Capstone 1 project, you can already start doing this, and then we will have a bit of a break, like this Christmas, New Year, and so on. And if you don't have any plans for that, you can keep on watching lectures and then also work on your second project, right? And then you'll be fine. I want to be full stack ML engineer. Do I need data engineering Zoomcamp or MLOps Zoomcamp after this? Well, it depends on what you mean by full stack ML engineer. So as you notice, data engineering Zoomcamp is not about machine learning, it's about data engineering. So if in your opinion, full stack ML engineer needs to know data engineering, then you should do data engineering. If not, then no. From my point of view, like I know what I put, so there is full stack data scientist. So what I put in the definition of a full stack data scientist is a person who can do all the steps in the CRISP DM process. So they can help product managers with business understanding. They can work with analysts in data understanding. They can help data engineers in the data preparation step. Then they can do the modeling, and then they can deploy the models too. So if you want to be that kind of person, so then of course you also need to learn a bit of product management and analytics, which we don't have courses for. But data engineering, preparing data before it goes to model, will certainly be helpful. And then also machine learning ops Zoomcamp, ML ops Zoomcamp will be helpful too. I would suggest to focus, like if you really want to focus on machine learning engineering, then probably doing MLOps Zoomcamp will make more sense for you. But data engineering Zoomcamp will also be quite useful in the future, because data scientists, ML engineers tend to work on data pipelines too. Maybe not all the content will be useful for you. So for example, the content about data warehousing, as a data scientist, I don't find it super useful to me personally in my work. Then also a module about analytics engineering. It's nice, but it's not something I do day to day. But the modules about like batch, and modules about like about Spark, modules about streaming. This is something that can be useful, because this is something we could use in building machine learning pipelines too. Like, because to put data in a machine learning model, we need to prepare this, we need to create data pipelines, and this is pretty relevant. So yeah, but you can just check. All the content is already there. You can just go and check it out. If you like, do it. If you don't, well, don't. I would suggest maybe to go with this one. What is a good resource for practice in Python? So the best resource for practice in Python is your terminal. So you go to your terminal, open IPython, and you start practicing it there. Or maybe not IPython, but Jupyter Notebook. Then I guess this is not the answer you were looking for. Maybe try to think what kind of simple things you can do, you can automate, and automate them. So there must be some things that you do manually, like, I don't know, every week. And then try to write a Python script to automate them. Or well, maybe something similar, like maybe just I don't know now. I'm running out of ideas right now. But if you just sit down for, I don't know, 20 minutes and think what kind of things I can automate, what kind of things I can do, and then try to use Python for that, that's the best resource. Of course, maybe you want me to suggest you a website where you can practice Python. Maybe LeetCode could be a good. So they have different problems, and I don't even know how it works these days. So yeah, you have some problems, right? And then you have different problems. Like, for example, this add to number, maybe it's too easy, but like, I don't know, just go here, and then you have like some problem description. You try to solve it with Python. That could be useful, let's say, if you want to work at a company like Amazon, because they will torture you during the interview with this kind of problem, and then at the same time you can practice Python. Yeah, another resource could be, I think, Code Academy. Yeah, this one. I think they have some Python course. Yeah. So maybe you can check that too. But I see that it's a pro one, so probably you'll need to pay for this one. Do they even have free ones? Yeah, this one seems free. Learn Python too. Don't take this one. Python for programmers. I hope they don't have the Python 2, but more Python 3. But yeah, I think the best way you can practice Python is by doing little projects, writing little scripts. Yeah. Maybe any link to run GPU with models in local? No, I don't. Like, just go to Google and you'll find a lot of them. I Don't suggest spending time on that. And if you want, it's on you, not because I asked you to do, because it's likely that you will spend a lot of time figuring out how it works and why the stuff in this article doesn't work on your machine. I've been there. I don't recommend. So I would suggest to try to go with Saturn Cloud or something similar and avoid spending, I don't know, a week on figuring out how to set up cuDNN and all these things on your, especially if it's a Windows machine. Yeah, that's terrible. I did set up something like this also on Windows, and it wasn't easy. So I don't recommend doing this. Better spend this time on something else. But if you want, if you insist on doing this, internet is your friend. Just go to Google and you will find a lot of resources. The catch there is that not all of them actually work, and you'll have to figure out which tutorial works and which doesn't. I think on Ubuntu is actually simpler. Yeah, well, at least according to some of the students who configured this. Maybe just go and actually I'm not answering this one yet, so let me. Yeah, so maybe just go to Slack and ask there, hey, I need help with configuring my local infrastructure, local GPU, because I know at least 2 students did this. Yeah, so if you're brave, do this. How to do data cleaning of a survey if all the columns are categorical and most of them have values like ones and zeros? Yeah, it's basically ready. You don't need to do any data cleaning. If it's true or false, you just take it as is and put them inside a model. I think. Like, of course, it depends on like if there is missing data, then maybe you need to do something with this missing data. But from what I see here, if it's just ones and zeros, it's good to go. You can just take this and use it as this. So it's actually like a quite simple situation from what it seems. Maybe I don't see some complexities there. There could be some, but on the surface, it looks rather straightforward. How can I modify my deployment not to process user profile dictionary, but the name of user that I used to parse the initial? I have no idea what you mean. Sorry, I don't know. Maybe can you rewrite this question to give a little bit more context? User profile dictionary. Oh, sorry, I don't know. Do we have to follow along with the lesson, or is the homework completely independent from the lessons? Homework is not independent from the lessons. So in the lessons, we show you how to do stuff, and then homework is taking the materials from the lessons and applying them independently. So you don't have to follow along the lessons, but you can, right? So it's up to you. You can, if you feel you already know this topic, just open the homework, try to do this. If you don't know how to solve it, go check the lessons. Or maybe I'm also sure if you already know, let's say, something about deep learning, then you can just find a solution online. I mean, not the solution to the homework, of course, but the solution to the problem you have. Yeah, don't try to look the solution online for the problem because it's cheating. Churn prediction. In the dataset was no column to help us predict churn within 1 month, for example, but it's very important. What could it be in real project? So I'm trying to understand in the dataset was not column. I don't know. Like, I guess what you try to say is we want to know that if somebody will leave the next month. I think this is how the problem was set up. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know how to answer that one. I think I need an example. Maybe this is something we can talk in Slack, because I know that Slido is not the best format. You cannot put a lot of information there. And in Slack, we can have like a more thorough discussion on that. So yeah, maybe just write it in Slack and please include a few examples. Can you share us a machine learning curriculum as a guide? Yeah, of course. Like this is why we are all here, right? So you just go to ML Zoomcamp and you follow that. That would be your curriculum, and I'm sharing it now with you. You're welcome. So when I started, I followed chapter 1.6 and used Conda all throughout. Later, when we used ppenv, and it had some problems due to multiple env managements. What is your usual environment manager? So I use Anaconda for prototypes. So I first create a prototype, just starting my Jupyter notebook with the base environment from Anaconda. When the prototype is ready, the notebook is ready, I create a virtual environment. Of course, like in theory, I should have first started with creating a virtual environment, but I don't always know all the packages in advance that I will need, and installing them one by one, I'm kind of lazy for that. So what I do is I just use the base environment with all the packages I need potentially. But then when like this kind of proof of concept, this prototype is finished and I know what exactly I want to do, I want to turn this notebook into a script. And then this is when I create a ppenv environment. So I start with Anaconda, I do everything of the prototype in Anaconda. Once the prototype is ready, I create a ppenv environment, a ppenv file, and then put things there. So basically the setup we had in this course, this is what I follow in practice too. So this is my usual environment manager. So it's Anaconda for everything, and then for specific projects, I create ppenv files. But then again, like in theory, maybe the recommended approach would be like when you start a project, you start with a clean virtual environment. Then you install, like first you install, I don't know, NumPy, pandas and whatnot, what you need, and then you add package by package when you create a prototype. I find it time consuming and I'm a lazy person, so that's why I kind of cut corners a little bit. Best practices on how to handle heavy pickle models, maybe 2-3 gigabytes. Like I would ask myself, why is my model that large? Is it because it has like, I don't know, 5,000 trees in my XGBoost model, or like, I don't know, 10,000? And if the answer is yes, I would try to cut the number of trees. And usually the situations when I find myself having very large trees is when my learning rate is high or low, sorry, very low. So each tree is only slightly improving the previous tree. So here, a good what you can do, you can just I don't know, increase the learning rate, I don't know, 3 times, and then cut the number of trees, reduce the number of trees by 3 times again. So then you will have roughly the same performance, maybe worse, a bit worse, but then your model will be not 3 gigabytes, but 1. Another thing you can do is you can reduce the number of the depth of the model, right? And then yeah, you can play with this more. So maybe increasing learning rate and removing, like making the tree more shallow could also help. Yeah, but that's typically how I would do. Otherwise, yeah, maybe if this is a linear model, so the only reason your linear model, like linear regression or logistic regression, could be that huge is because you have a lot of categorical variables, and then you have a weight for each of them. And then, yeah, maybe you can reduce the number of variables you have by using these techniques we talked about half an hour ago. Yeah, maybe you can talk about your specific case in Slack, and we can figure out what's the best way for you. Alternative for cross-validation and hyperparameter tuning in deep learning. So in deep learning, if you saw the lectures already, you might have noticed that we don't use cross-validation there, simply because it's too time-consuming. So we set aside a validation dataset, and we use this to guide us to select the best parameter. So that's the usual approach I follow, because with proper cross-validation, with creating 3 faults, it's simply too time-consuming. Right? So that's why, yeah, that's why I follow a more simpler approach. And I guess that is the alternative. What part of data science ML work you work on every day? What would be something that is unforgivable as a data scientist? Well, that's two questions, right? So the first part, what part of data science ML work you work on every day? I don't know how to answer that. Well, but also because I work as a principal data scientist, I work on pretty much everything that the company needs to work with. So which means it's all the models are related to some extent to online classifieds, to online marketplaces. So that's what I need to deal more with domain expertise maybe rather than ML knowledge. Yeah, I guess that's the answer. But then from we have a lot of different use cases, like we have recommender systems, we have search, we have like I don't know, moderation. Yeah, we actually have an article about this TechOLX. So if I try, for example, this one, learning to rank, sorting search results, that's my colleague who wrote it. And I think we have somewhere an article about this data science by OLX. It happened to be written by me. So you can see what kind of use cases are there that we solve. So maybe it could be interesting for you. What would be something that is unforgivable to a data scientist? Well, to me, you have to know how to set up a validation framework. Like you have to validate your data. And then if you ask me what is better, random forest or logistic regression, I would say, okay, just do validation and then check it. So if you don't know how to do this, I would suggest to learn how to do this. So this is maybe unforgivable is a strong word, but for example, if a candidate that I interview doesn't know about my validation, then probably this candidate will be rejected. Yeah. So do master, I think this is one of the most important skills, is knowing to how to validate your model. And then once you know how to do this, you can answer any question by just testing it. So if you have an environment where you can experiment, and you can experiment if you have a validation framework, then you can answer all the questions like, what if I increase learning rate? You just increase and then you see what happens, because it's all case dependent, it's all data dependent. So you need to know how to experiment and be comfortable with experimenting. I think this is the most important thing for a data scientist. Do you think that after finishing the ML Zoomcamp, it's possible to work on ML engineering freelance contracts? Or do one need a year of professional experience? It's possible. The sky is the limit. It's up to you. How do you sell yourself? I'll tell you that I did that. So I didn't finish ML Zoomcamp, of course. I finished some Coursera courses. And I did freelancing there. So before getting my full-time job, I freelanced for a couple of years, and then I was also studying at university. And then for me, when I got my first data science job, I already had a bunch of portfolio projects from freelancing. So it's certainly possible. One caveat, though, that the market in 2012 was very different from 2022. But I think the need for freelancers is still there. I don't know how to find freelancer contracts now. Maybe it's like the usual, I don't know, Fiverr, what do you have there, like Upwork, things like that. Yeah, so you need to have professional experience somewhere. So in my case, I had experience in Java and I learned ML. So my profile was I was helping companies with doing machine learning in Java. So I already knew Java. So maybe that's an important piece of information that you also need to know. So if you don't have professional experience at all, it might be a bit difficult, but probably you should focus on portfolio projects, not on years of experience, right? So if you can show the client, the potential client, that you can solve their problems, they wouldn't care if you have worked before or not, because they will see your portfolio and they will understand, okay, this person can actually do the thing I need. So yeah, that's, I guess, maybe one more thing. I took part in a Kaggle competition. It was about detecting duplicates. And then, because I was on the leaderboard, a company who had the same problem. They reached out to me saying that we have the same problem. Can you help work with us and solve it? So they didn't care if I had any professional experience. They cared only about my solution. So they knew already from Kaggle that I could solve this problem. That's why they reached out to me. And the idea there is it's not like I just work on this problem alone and don't tell anyone. I was actively sharing what I was doing in public. So that's why I encourage everyone, every single person who is taking this course, to share this progress. Because if you don't, then nobody will know that you actually have the skills. But if you do, then, for example, you share something about the project you did, and this project could be about, I don't know, detecting duplicates, for example. I don't think any of you did a project like that, but just an example. And then maybe somebody who needs to solve this problem will see this post, and they think, okay, this person actually did a project in that. Let me contact them and see if they would be up to helping us. So, yeah. As a junior data scientist, what is the most important skill or skills top 3 do you consider? Let me think. Well, I mentioned cross-validation, right? Another thing is when I interview people, I ask about projects. And usually I ask, why did you do this project? And if I get an answer to, like a good answer to this question, why did you do this? Then like it's a very good sign. So probably here what I mean to say is explaining why you did certain things is really helpful. Then this cross-validation or validation framework, and I guess like coding in general. That's top 3, right? And maybe like one of them could be communication, right? So this is what I like explaining things. Okay, I actually need to go now, so I will stop now, and we will keep. We will come back to these questions next week on next Monday. So yeah, I hope it was useful. Great questions. Thanks a lot. Keep them coming. So the link is always the same. So if you're watching this in recording and you feel like you have a question, please ask the question and I will be answering them next week. Or if next week I will not be able to do this, maybe I'll just record an answer separately, like asynchronously, and upload it. Okay, I hope you're enjoying the course so far. I am sure you learned a lot from your peers, or you're still reviewing them, and you are or will be soon having a lot of fun with deep learning. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the week and see you next Monday.